Upcycle squad? This is an epic video. I'm gonna be showing you 4 different ways to sew a zipper pocket. Who doesn't like zipper pockets? They're the most secure and they're really not that hard to sew. Let's get right into it. A basic principle I follow for the size of a pocket is the size of my phone. Feel free to use any object to determine the size of your pocket, but your phone and or wallet is a great starting point. The first zipper pocket we are going to be sewing, I'm going to call the hidden zipper patch pocket. I'm going to be using a 6-inch zipper and my pattern piece is just a rectangle. My rectangle measures 7 3/4 inch as the width and then 9.5 inches as the length. You can do any length you would like, but for the width, I like to leave about an inch of space on each side after the teeth. For the first step, we're going to trim off 2 inches from the top of our rectangle, and we are going to use that piece, so make sure it's a nice straight cut. Now I'm going to individually finish the edge of both of the sides of the pieces we just cut. So finish each individual edge with either a serge or a zigzag. You could also use bias tape. Now we're going to place right sides together and sew the seam at a 1/2 inch. So we're sewing at a 1/2 inch or about 1.5 centimeters. And I'm going to be using a slightly longer stitch length. So mine's at 4 and you'll see why later. Once your seam is sewn, we're going to flip up that top panel, grab your iron, and we are going to butterfly this seam open. So press that seam open. You should be looking like this. Now grab your zipper and a few pins. Now we are going to place the zipper face down onto that seam we just sewed, and we're going to be aligning the teeth to where the fabric meets. So I'm going to start on one end, aligning the teeth to where the fabric meets and having that an inch away from the edge, placing a pin there. And now I'm just going to lay the zipper down, making sure to align the teeth to where the fabric meets and placing a few pins around to keep it in place. You should roughly be looking like this. And at the top of the zipper here, I kind of just pulled the zipper tape together to meet. And I actually just unzipped a tiny bit so we can get as close to the zipper stop as possible. Now it is very simple. I'm going to start stitching at the top of the zipper here and then just go around the perimeter of the zipper, stitching as close to the teeth as I can. Feel free to use a zipper foot here. I'm not going to, I can get close enough with my normal foot. Take it slow, and I've switched my stitch length down to 2.5 now. This is how I'm looking so far, and when you get to the bottom of the zipper, I recommend going back and forth a few times. Boom, so I went back and forth a few times at the bottom, and now that I'm at the top again, I'm gonna do the same thing. That is how we are looking. If I used a zipper foot, I probably could have gotten a slightly cleaner line there, but hey, I appreciate the beauty and imperfection. Now grab yourself a seam ripper and we're going to be undoing the stitch from this back tack all the way to the other, exposing the zipper. So with that slightly longer stitch length on that original seam, just makes it easier to pick out this entire seam. For something like this, I would use the red knob. So just place that in, make sure not to cut your fabric, but just undo that seam. Boom. You can pull out these little loose threads. Now bring it to your ironing board and we're just going to iron over all of your edges at about a 1/2 inch. Boom. Now your hidden zipper patch pocket is ready to stitch on. All you need to do is stitch around the perimeter on whatever you want to put it on. The next 2 zipper pockets are also patch pockets, but they are sewn a little bit differently. So I already have my patch pockets prepped. They are my back pockets because I want these zipper pockets to be disguised as back pockets. But you can use these next 2 methods with any shape patch pocket. Here's the dimensions of these pockets before I folded over the edges. And like I said, you can use any shape or size patch pocket. For the first method, I have my zipper, my patch pocket, and then a piece of interfacing that is cut the size of the zipper tape. The interfacing is technically optional, but it will make the zipper pocket more clean, and for the purposes of this video, it will help to see the lines that I draw out. First things first, I fused my interfacing to the underside of the pocket. If you don't want to use interfacing, you can draw out your lines straight onto the fabric. Now measure the length of your zipper teeth. So from the stop on the bottom to the stop on the top. So take the measurement of your zipper teeth, and we're going to add a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 centimeter to that measurement. We're adding that measurement so we have a little bit of space on the bottom and the top when we sew it in. Once you have the measurement of your zipper teeth plus a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 centimeter, you're going to take that measurement and draw a straight line onto your patch pocket where you want the zipper to be. So mine's gonna be pretty much right in the middle of my interfacing, but you can put it anywhere on your patch pocket. Now from each end of your mark, you're going to extend out about a 1/4 inch on each side, so a 1/2 inch total. So that'll be about a 1/2 centimeter on each side as well. If your zipper has super thick teeth, you might want to extend this end measurement a little bit more, but for most zippers, a 1/2 inch or just above a centimeter is perfect. Now all we're going to do is connect the ends of these little extension lines, and this will give us a nice rectangle. Boom, just like that. Now I'm just going to freehand a nice little angled line from each corner to form a little triangle on both sides. Now you can grab some scissors, and we are going to cut this middle line starting at the tip of the triangle to the other tip of the triangle, right to the corner. So I've cut this middle line. Now I'm just going to do the triangle right to the corner. So once you've cut out your little insert for your zipper, we're going to be ironing over all of the edges. So now this outer rectangle is basically our fold line. So we're gonna fold on that rectangle all the way around, starting with the straight sides and then the triangle bit and giving it a nice press. So I've done the straight sides first, and now I'm just going to fold up the little triangle bits and give it a press. This is how you should be roughly looking on the underside. And then the right side, we just have a nice rectangular cutout. Now you can probably imagine the zipper is going to go right under, and we are just going to stitch the perimeter of that rectangle, making our nice zipper pocket. For this version of the zipper pocket, having the interfacing is nice because it helps the fabric not fray. But for the next patch pocket, I'm gonna show you, you can skip the interfacing and it won't fray. Now I'm gonna put my rectangle over my zipper, put a few pins in place, and then we can stitch it in. This is roughly how you should be looking. So it pretty much goes right to the ends of our zipper. Now I'm going to start at the bottom here and just follow this edge around the entire zipper. And when you get to the zipper pulley, it might be wise to unzip a tiny bit just so you can get close to the zipper stop. Or if you're using a zipper foot, you should be fine. And I would recommend going back and forth a few times at the top. And then also when you get back to where you started, go back and forth a few times. Boom! So you can leave it like that. I might follow my line of top stitching once more. Make sure everything's super locked in, but as of now, that is a finished zipper pocket. Ready to stitch on. For the next zipper pocket, it is another patch pocket, but slightly different construction. So you can pretty much use any shape or size piece of fabric. I'm going to be using the same as the last one. And this time you will need a strip of fabric that is the length of your zipper tape, but double the width. I am going to be interfacing this so you can see the lines better, but that is not absolutely necessary. So for the first step, we are going to be finishing all of the outer edges of your fabric strip. That is the length of your zipper tape, but double the width. Just like that, so use a serge or a zigzag. Now we're going to be drawing out the lines the same way as we did for the previous pocket, but this time we're going to do it onto our fabric strip. So the length of your zipper teeth plus a 1/4 inch or about a 1/2 centimeter. Now adding a 1/2 inch line on each end or just above a centimeter, connecting those lines, and then adding the triangles. Once your lines are drawn out, you're going to place your fabric strip onto the right side of your pocket. And we're just going to place it wherever we want the zipper to be. Now pin that into place to the right side of your pocket. Now we're going to follow the outline of this rectangle with a straight stitch. So follow that rectangle with a straight stitch. Now we're going to cut this inner line to the tip of a triangle. And we're going to cut our triangle out right to that corner stitch, but not cutting the stitch. So we're cutting along that inner line through the entire pocket. Then once we get to the triangle, we're cutting right up to our stitch, but making sure to not cut the stitch. Boom. So this is how you should be looking. Inner shape cut out. Now we're going to flip this fabric strip to the underside of the pocket. So I'll do that one more time. So all we're doing is taking the strip and flipping it into the hole we cut out. This will definitely take some maneuvering, but should roughly look like that at first. And we can see our fabric strip has come through. Now I'm going to press the strip flat and making sure to fully pull out this seam. So I'm kind of just unrolling this seam to the edge and then pressing it flat around the entire rectangle. So I kind of did a rough press to make sure everything's laying flat, and I'm going to go back through and just make sure that the seam is fully pulled out into the edge of the rectangle. So after some maneuvering and pressing, this is what you should be left with. So we have a clean rectangle on the right side of the fabric, and then you can see your inner strip. Now we can place this clean rectangle over our zipper and stitch around the perimeter just like the other pocket. You can also stitch around the perimeter of the rectangle before adding it to the zipper. Also, feel free to use pins. I find that since there's a little bit of bulk, it kind of gets wonky when you pin. So I'm just lining it up nicely and stitching very slowly. Starting at the bottom and then just following that edge. And when you get close to the zipper pulley, you can unzip a tiny bit just so you can get close to that zipper stop. And I always like to back tack at the top and the bottom. I went for another line of top stitching. That is optional, but this is ready to sew on. Now for the final zipper pocket. The only pattern piece we are going to need is a large rectangle. The width of the rectangle is going to be the length of your zipper plus about an inch of space on each side. So again, the width of your rectangle is going to be the length of your zipper with about an inch on each side. And that's so we can just sew up the sides of the pocket. And the length of the rectangle is pretty much however long you want it to be. So basically, this is going to fold up, and then this will be the depth of your pocket bag. So depending on how long your zipper is, that will determine the width of this rectangle. And then depending on your application of this zipper pocket, you can determine how long you want the rectangle to be. And like I said, it will be folded up like this. So half of the length of your rectangle will be how long the pocket bag is. First step, I'm adding a piece of interfacing the size of my zipper tape to the top of my pocket piece. This is optional, but recommended, and it'll help me show you the lines. And I've placed that about 3/4 of an inch from the top. So when we fold up, I have enough space to sew the pocket bag. We're going to draw out the lines the same way. So the first line is just the length of the zipper teeth plus a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 centimeter. Now for our little line at the end, which is a 1/2 inch or just above a centimeter. Now connecting our lines to make a rectangle. Boom. And then we can add our little triangles in. Now we're going to take this pocket piece and stitch around this rectangle similarly to the last pocket, but we are going to stitch it onto the garment wherever we want the zipper pocket to be. So you got to decide that for yourself, but I'm going to be adding them to the front of these pants. We're going to stitch it to the right side of whatever you're adding it to, and wherever you place your rectangle on the garment is where the zipper pocket will open. All right, so we're going to be stitching the outline of the rectangle directly to the garment on the right side. Once you have stitched your rectangle, attaching your pocket piece to the actual garment, we're going to start by cutting the inner line from the tip of the triangle to the tip of the triangle. and then cutting out our triangle right to the corner, but not cutting our stitch. Once your full thing is cut out, we're gonna do similar to the last pocket, but we're gonna take this entire piece and flip it through that hole, and boom, to form that rectangular shape that you're probably familiar with at this point. Once you flip that through to your best ability, we're gonna flip it over and then press it to make it look nice. So we're looking at the underside now. I'm just gonna go through, make sure that the seam is fully pulled out so you can iron it flat and then fold over. I typically just kind of pinch the seam when it's fully pulled out and then give it a press, forming that nice rectangular shape to fit around the zipper. It can be helpful to just flip the pocket piece up and then iron the seam away from the rectangle. That'll just help you to fully pull out that seam and then get a nice press along the edge. This is how you should be looking now. This is the underside, and then very similar on the right side. So we're looking at the right side now, our rectangle, and then the big flap is still hanging down. We're going to place the rectangle over the zipper. We're going to stitch around the perimeter, and then after we will flip up our long flap to form the pocket bag. So I've just placed my zipper under the rectangle. Now I'm just going to stitch around the outer edge. I'm not using pins, but feel free to do so if you like. And my flat piece is still hanging down. So I'm just starting at the bottom of the zipper, following that edge, going nice and slow and making sure to line it up. Boom. You can call it with just one stitch. I am gonna go around one more time. So clean, it hurts. Now for the final step, so we've stitched our zipper in place. All we're gonna do is flip to the back side. Now I'm just going to flip my pocket bag up, folding it in half. And now we just stitch, starting from here, around the entire perimeter that is still open, forming our nice pocket bag. Again, we're just flipping our pocket bag to meet the top here. And I would recommend giving this just a nice little press. And we're just gonna stitch around the open end, closing it up. So like I said, just stitching the open edge closed down, and you might have to flip your fabric under to only get that edge. I'm actually going to flip it so the pocket is facing down, and then I can just maneuver to get that full edge closed up. Just starting at one side and going all the way around to the other side. Boom! So I've stitched up my edge nicely, and now you can see it is a fully functional pocket. For the final step, you can either serge this edge to finish the seam. You can do a zigzag. I'm going to be finishing it with bias tape, which I still have to make. Or if you're going to line the garment, you can just leave it raw. You can also stitch the pocket bag down so it doesn't move around. Boom. That is how you sew zipper pockets. If you got value from this video, make sure to like and subscribe for your boy. Let me know what type of video you'd like to see next. I'm going to be absolutely grinding the YouTube videos this year because there's nothing more fulfilling than sharing my passion with you. And every new person that learns how to make clothing is one step further to making a difference in this messed up fashion world. Follow me on Instagram if you want to, and I'll catch you in the next video. You're beautiful, and I love you.